So welcome, welcome everybody. I did joke I was going to get some laugh tracks and applause tracks on my phone because I pretty much knew it would be 2 to 5 people. So obviously we'll keep it informal and easy. I can go through my PowerPoint. It's I'm the anti-PowerPoint person. So for me to put this together was a lot of struggle and focus on my part. You'll see how depressing that is once I go through the deck. So a little bit about myself, and this is being recorded, so that's why I'm going to try to be a little bit more animated. But my name is Anello. I've been with SunGard for 10 years now, and I was hired as the email engineer at SunGard 10 years ago. At that point, we had like 55 different mail systems, and we focused really on consolidating onto Exchange in a centralized fashion. And that sort of is how I inherited LCS, OCS, because they couple nicely from a systemic point of view with Exchange. And then just a little bit about SunGard. We're a pretty big company. Not huge, but not small. 17,000 employees worldwide, $4 billion in annual revenue. We're primarily a software company, and primarily we focus in the financial services sphere. But SunGard pretty much does everything from disaster recovery to software for public sector, municipalities, etc. And for a while, a large portion of SunGard was, we had a business that focused on higher education software as well. So very technologically advanced user base at SunGard. Most people are, I would say, power users. When I came to SunGard, we didn't have any sort of IAM platform. It was essentially anarchy. You could do whatever you want. Even within my own team, there were 5 of us. There were 3 different IAM solutions, so we all had trillions, so we could IAM with whomever on whatever platform that they had. But it made collaboration next to impossible from a global perspective. And at that point, we also didn't have any security policies that dictated you can or cannot use X, Y, and Z application. So really, it was up to the end user. With a minor exception, we do have some traders, and they were using AOL, and they had an application to archive their messages. But other than that, it was essentially anything goes. 2006, we had bought the LCS license with 500 CALs, and as an IT team, we just decided to do it. Sat in a room one day, put in the disk, did the install, set up the SQL server, and we were off running. It was IAM and presence only, really only IT people and the people we liked, right? So, if you were in with us, you got to use it, and everyone really liked it. And we did some pretty cool stuff with it, some automatic group information down to the LCS client. But other than that, it was just 500 people, IAM and presence. But we really enjoyed it. 2007 was really a pivotal year for SunGard historically when it comes to Lync. Welcome. Find a seat, any seat. So in 2007, we were in a sort of a unique state at that point. We did not have an enterprise agreement with Microsoft, but we had a lot of people. We were running Exchange 2003 at the time. And SunGard is and was owned by the same people who own Avaya. So for us, Avaya was it was our mantra for a phone system, Avaya. But in Christchurch, they really needed a phone system really desperately. And the cost for an Avaya was really unacceptable for them. So they really wanted to have enterprise voice in 2006 on OCS with Exchange UM on Exchange 2007. And because we didn't have the EA, we didn't have the ability to upgrade our infrastructure for Exchange 2007 at that point. And because of some other factors, essentially what we decided to do at that point was to have them stand up an independent Active Directory Exchange OCS environment within Christchurch, the office, that forwarded their voicemail to their SunGard mailbox, but they essentially set up a closet OCS PBX system within the office for approximately 250 users. Most of them are programmers and IT people, and they blew it away. It was just a huge success. People loved it. And really, the person who headed our IT organization in Christchurch, who actually has a lot of responsibility for the entire region, became a huge evangelist of this solution. And they found that, especially in Asia at the time, they had many PBXs that were on their deathbed, you know, and there's a lot of concern about upgrading those PBXs and the cost that would ensue. So with the success that happened in Christchurch, the surrounding Asia-Pacific region obviously took notice, and that's what they wanted. They were pretty convinced that that was the way to go for them. They understood that at that point there were some gaps, high availability, failover capability, etc. But they did it, and they proved for the first time, at least within SunGard, that you can have a software-based PBX and have it be a very successful thing. And on top of it, the users, they just loved it. But this is really when the whole, I say worlds collide, because this is really when within our organization that we really started to take a serious look at doing things a little bit differently. And really all the credit has to go to, you know, our colleagues in Asia. And you know, it's all about necessity, right? You don't have the money, but you need something, so what can we do? So they were thinking outside of the box. They were thinking about what can we do to get where we need to go without spending a crazy amount of money. Then in 2008, we luckily signed an enterprise agreement with Microsoft. This obviously paved the way for a lot of our global deployments, because it handled the large licensing aspect of the product for us. In addition to that, in 2008, SunGard acquired a large financial services company in Europe. And at that point, they were using Skype as their primary collaboration tool. Interestingly, at that time, SunGard was also owned by the same people who owned Skype before Microsoft bought them. But our security policy forbids Skype utilization within our organization. So we had 2,000 users come on, and we needed to give them some sort of alternative to Skype. Not necessarily apples and apples, but some functionality was there. So when those 2,000 users came on, we decided we needed to do some sort of vendor analysis. So we did a vendor analysis. We looked at Jabber, Jive, the Avaya UC solution, and really we honed in on OCS. And there were a few reasons. Obviously, the enterprise agreement helped grease the skids a little bit, but also we were a Microsoft shop. So it was sort of a natural thing for us to take on another Microsoft service, familiar with the tools, familiar with the interfaces, just familiar with, you know, Microsoft in general. So it was an easy thing for us. And then it did meet all of our core requirements, right? We needed Active Directory integration. We definitely wanted single sign-on. We didn't want users to have to do multiple usernames or passwords. Remote capabilities had to be scalable. And you know, most of those products can do that, but when we did our analysis, it definitely was obvious to us that the OCS solution was the way to go. So 2009, this is when the revolution begins for us, because at this point we have our EA, we did our vendor analysis, and we have this need for these 2,000 users. So at that point, we did a global deployment of OCS. We did it in 3 regions. We did it in the United States, we did it in Europe, and we did it in Asia. This was a pretty big deal for us because up until that point, we haven't put a lot of infrastructure, system infrastructure, in Asia. Even today for email, Asia goes back to Europe or they go back to the States depending on what network path is best for them. But they really demanded a localized infrastructure. They said, we have to have it. We see this as being our telephony solution, our primary collaboration solution. We can't have it hosted, halfway across the world. And, they made a valid point, and SunGard invested a lot of money, firewalls, switches, load balancers, all the necessary equipment to support OCS from an enterprise perspective. So that was a really big deal for us. And in hindsight, I was a little bit neutral about what we did. But now I think obviously it was the best decision to give them their localized resource, because over the next after 2009 for the next 18 months, the entire Asia region moved over to enterprise voice. It's around 3,000 users. OCS, we set up the PIC, public internet connectivity. We did the federation, and that has been also something that's been really great for us. And now with the Skype federation, it's been even better because we have heard back. Yes. No, we do not. It's out there, and there's so many Skype users, then it begs the question, why not just do open federation? Which, in my personal opinion, I think we should. We don't dictate who we can send SMTP traffic to. I don't think we should necessarily dictate who we send SIP traffic to either. And if you really, there's on LinkedIn, I wish I had the article, but on LinkedIn a few months ago, I read an article about someone talking about using, I'm getting off topic here, but we have a lot of time. Using federation as a business tool for salespeople. And that's something, I'll talk about a little bit later, but that's something we haven't really done within SunGard, but I see it as really something over the next year that I personally really want to push out to our user base. I forget the name of the tool, but there's also that Microsoft tool that will go into your Outlook, look at your contacts, and identify anyone in there that you can federate with Lync. So I have some security challenges there within our organization to make that happen. But that is the direction we're going because the collaboration capabilities through Lync they're just great, right? So no, we don't, but we want to. That's part of SunGard, yes. They actually do not, that specific segment of SunGard does not run Lync though. They're essentially our sister company, but in a lot of ways we operate very independently from one another. So even they're a different mail system, even though we share the same domain name. But no, yeah, we still do that. The availability services is what they're called if you go to SunGard's website. At this point, we were able to bring the standalone Christchurch OCS infrastructure and essentially shut it down and bring it into our proper worldwide global implementation, moved everything to, instead of Christchurch, everything's based out of Singapore now. And it just spread like wildfire. And one of the things that we found that, I never expected desktop sharing to be such a big hit in 2008, 2009. I thought, in my mind, I'm thinking IM and presence, audio and video is pretty cool. At that point, it was live meeting. We didn't even deploy it. It worked, but we never really sent it out to our users because it's just cumbersome to use. But our users they just loved it. The adoption was incredible. Then in 2011, we decided to upgrade to 2010. I'm a little bit dyslexic, so if I start transposing numbers from here to there, forgive me, just point it out. But this was a pretty big deal for us because especially since Asia had proven enterprise voice can be a very successful solution, they knew that there was a certain high availability aspect to OCS that was limited. So they really wanted Lync 2010 so they could have that, the SBAs within their offices to ensure that even if the core went down, they can still send and receive phone calls, etc. The Lync meeting, it was awesome, right? I mean, it might be when someone twists your arm for a long time and they let go, it just feels so good. So using live meeting and then going to Lync meeting, it's such a relief. But really, we love it. We use it a ton. The integration with Outlook just makes it super simple for users. And with some of the increased functionality and simplicity for 2013, we're super excited about that. The monitoring and reporting Lync 2010 was something initially that wasn't really on my radar, but once we set it up, I immediately said, aha, this is the proof that my system works, this is the proof that my system doesn't work, and this is also the proof that this system is worth something to our organization because I can actually back it up with some real solid information. Lync 2010 is really when our users started to go crazy, and we started to see some pretty interesting use cases for it. SunGard's a global organization, and my team is intercontinental. When we did our Lync 2013 deployment in November, the infrastructure, the conference room, we had my colleague from India, my colleague from Christchurch, and we had 2 people from London, and then myself from Philadelphia, from the United States. So everyone's in a global team at SunGard. It's just how we operate. So we heard some stories about what some people were doing. They were essentially setting up persistent meetings. You have your team in Pune, and you have your team in Burlington, Massachusetts. They're supposed to be one team, but everyone comes in different times. They don't really interact, and they act independently. So what we found some of our offices doing was they set up these essentially leak meetings that are going all the time on machines. So when people come in, shift changes, etc., they always say hello to the people on the other side of the world. If someone sneezes in one location, you'll get a gesundheit from another location. And it just brought a whole new sense of synergy to the team because they actually feel like that, we're in a room with, our other teammates, even though we may not physically be here. There's definitely that sense of togetherness. They also learned the value of good mics and speakers in that situation because when you're just having it out and open, you can have all sorts of audio problems. Lync 2010 client blew the OCS client away too. There's no doubt about that. And one of the things that we did to each version, like every good engineer should, you take the things that you learned from the previous version and you try to make it better in the next version. So OCS, it was kind of complicated. We had F5 load balancers. We had tons of VLANs. The networking was a nightmare. Troubleshooting data paths was next to impossible. So 2010, we really went a much simpler path with sort of our network infrastructure to be much more flat. We have our public and we have our enterprise LAN for our systems, and then we have our WAN for our customers, and then we have our internet. Very simple, right? So I know it's only going to be on one of 3 locations, the data. So we really worked hard for that. We simplified the load balancer configurations. We simplified our firewall rules, which you guys know can be really problematic. I originally tried to set all my firewall rules to be extremely specific from server to server. And really what we had to do is we just decided to set up secure zones that had a much broader port range that were deemed security acceptable to have a sort of a broader port range between them. So doing that really simplified our environment, and it eased a lot of my headache troubleshooting our environment, and it absolutely improved the performance for our users. We didn't see nearly as many meeting and collaboration failures as we did before we did that. So just simple. Keep it simple, right? That's what they say. 2013-14, here comes Lync 2013. And honestly, when I put this deck together, I was hoping to be a little bit further along in our Lync 2013 deployment than we are today. Right now, we do have our Lync 2013 servers completely deployed globally, which I'll talk about in a minute. But we did run into a couple hiccups with our migration process, which I'm happy to share with you guys. Fortunately, they weren't Lync specific. They were environmentals that were required in order to support Lync, but they really pushed us back in a lot and caused me a lot of grief and gray hair. But you know, with the pool pairing, the Lync 2013 mobile client, and our anticipated growth for enterprise voice, we really thought that, you know, we need to get ahead of the 2013 bus and just get on it as soon as possible. So, you know, that's what we did. You know, it quickly became our flagship application. So having the redundancy, data center failover, and all of that kind of stuff like we have for email, obviously was like a no-brainer for us. Like, we just got to do it. And we're looking, I'll mention this in a little bit, I think, but we're looking right now to deploy, if you guys use the F5 big IPs, we're looking to deploy the global traffic managers also, which will help us do some additional global redundancy with our Lync services. We're doing some pretty cool stuff with SharePoint as well, SharePoint 2013 with, not to go on a tangent, but data center replication for our SharePoint environment, and then have the solution be smart enough to understand what part of the world you're coming in from and send you to the closest SharePoint environment. And the global traffic manager is going to help out a lot there too. 2013, again, simplify, super simplify. that was my mantra. We got to keep it simple. Whatever we do, it has to be supportable. If I get hit by a bus tomorrow, I want whoever SunGard needs to hire to be able to come back in and understand exactly what I did and not say, what is going on here? What else? Lync 2013, great for us. We just did our first enterprise voice deployment in Europe, in our Luxembourg office. Europe is a pretty staunch supporter of Avaya, so there's another, you know, sort of crack in that foundation there. But that's pretty exciting for me because I thought Europe would be one of the last places in our organization to move to enterprise voice. But the price is right. It works really well, and with Exchange users get a really fantastic experience. The other thing about Lync 2013 that made me super happy was that I could use my F5s for the reverse proxy. We are using TMG for our 2013 and 2010 environment. Initially, I tried to use UAG. I think I mentioned this to you the other night. We tried to use UAG, and there's actually documentation on how to set UAG up for Lync 2010. But what I didn't realize, and what it took 3 months of support case with Microsoft to come to the conclusion of, is that UAG is only supported for the simple URLs. So for dial-in, but for the web services URL, for your pool, for your address book, for group expansion, it is not supported on UAG. So 3 months troubleshooting, and then Microsoft comes back and says it's not supported, and I say, what? You know? But being able to use the F5 for the reverse proxy for us just really simplified our environment. And the reverse proxy configuration on the F5 is really, really quite nice. I'm very happy with it. So Lync 2013 within SunGard, we built it on Hyper-V. I am not a huge fan of virtualization. Some people may pelt me with rocks for saying that. Some people may cheer. I think virtualization can be incredible for a lot of things. Real-time audio, I'm not quite sure about. Talk to Microsoft, they made me feel better. My rule, though, within SunGard is, yeah, we can do it, but I don't want any clustering of the Hyper-V servers. I don't want any commingling of other applications. I want a dedicated hardware. I want dedicated NICs. I want dedicated memory. And fine, sure enough, we did it. And I think I might have it here, but I have the cost comparisons of the virtualization versus non-virtualization, and they're very persuading. So it's kind of hard to say no when you're going to save some real money. But what we did is we put 4 physical servers in each location. They're running Windows 2012 data center. I have a picture of the servers, but they have 25 drives in the front. They're the DL380s. They're pretty cool looking. we followed the best practices, for Microsoft virtualization. The other thing, and now this is a small one, the added archiving. It's only for 200 people, but we do have around 200 traders within our organization, and they're governed by compliance, regulatory restrictions. So we actually have a policy within our environment that if any of these users who are a member of a specific group get enabled for Lync, they immediately get disabled for Lync automatically, because we never had a mechanism in place to capture their IM. And I love Lync, so I want everyone to use it. And so I felt really bad for these guys for a long time, and they would come to me every 3-6 months, hey, what can we do, what can we do? And at that point, there wasn't a very good solution that we found that would allow us to integrate Lync archiving with the email archiving solution that they were already using, because we didn't want to have another solution. We wanted to make sure it went into the same location. The same discovery people can go in there and run the queries on email, IMs alike. So there wasn't really anything there that didn't cost a whole lot of money. So it was cost prohibitive for us. So finally, the vendor that we're using for email archiving has a little bit more experience with Lync, and we've been able to work with them to come up. It's a custom automated PowerShell process that does the export and the upload and does all sorts of checks and balances to ensure that it happens, etc. But this is a big deal for me. It was just a personal win. That's why I put it up there, because sometimes it's the small things that make you happy. So after this now means that every single SunGard user is a Lync user. So that's pretty awesome. And we added Qos Support. We did the in-band port configuration. We have over 80 offices, and they're all unique, and they all have unique qualities, and they all have their own flavor of environment, right? So we're going to deploy QoS on a location-by-location basis after our rollout is done, coupled with some of our other unified communication solutions like our Polycom video equipment, etc. So we're laying the groundwork because we know that it's going to be required. I didn't do any. I just did the in-band provisioning. So this is basically setting up all the Lync services to have their own. So essentially, I did the QoS deployment like 60%, right? So we haven't done anything like that yet. We will do that on a location-by-location basis because there's going to have to be a lot of analysis done. As soon as a call fails, thank you. As soon as a call fails and you have QoS enabled, no one's going to accept your explanation that the call failed because you reached some sort of limit. So there's going to be it is a Herculean task ahead of us to deploy QoS within our organization. We recognize it. But we just set up the ports now. So from the system perspective, Lync is ready for all of the additional configuration to happen. That make sense? It's a great question.
Thank you.
It is, yeah. It scares me a little bit. I'm a little intimidated by it. And this is actually one area. At SunGard, we like to do things ourselves. We don't have consulting money. We don't bring in consultants to help us design or deploy. But that is one area that I have requested that we get some professional assistance with, because there's very little margin for error there. Yeah. This is a picture of one of the servers we're using. I just put it in there because I'm easily impressed, obviously. But I just thought it was cool to have 25 drives in the front of a 2U server. It was... there's between like 4 and 6. So if we have 4, if we have 4 per data center, we'll do the striped array sort of So each one of them will have a front end. You know, the edge will be on different. Web app servers will be somewhere else, file servers, SQL servers, etc. So we essentially just spread the load. Deployment, where the rubber hits the road, right? So for us and for me, this is our third go-around at a global deployment of this suite. And I was actually lucky enough to have the same project manager for each phase. And I need to remind her, she's the second most senior Lync person in our organization because she's been through it so many times. She knows the roles, she knows what it does, she knows how it works, she knows the errors, she's got the jargon. So for us, you know, we're seasoned at this point, and we're sort of expected to be able to do it and do it well without any excuses. Unfortunately, I have a couple excuses. Like I said, we're running the F5 load balancers. We were running an old version. We really needed to upgrade our load balancers to the newer version. And that upgrade process was very challenging for us. In each region, we had unique issues with our upgrade process. And some of them, we had some really strange behavior from our load balancers. F5 identified some of it as a bug. Some of it, they just, I don't know, but we can help you configure it to work. It worked previously, but it doesn't work now. But that was a real challenge to upgrade our load balancers. And in hindsight, it's something we should have done last year. So when the project came, it was already done. But for us, we're lucky enough as an organization to have a proper project management office. So that means we have a scope, we have an executive summary, we have sponsorship, there are regular reports, there are communications, there's identified project teams, resources, everything is sort of handled. And it's nice for me because I have someone who handles it. I need to help her, but you know, she's out there making sure everyone's doing what they need to do. So that really helps a very smooth process from a project perspective. I believe every engineer should take project management courses just because it helps put some logic behind your activity. Just understanding what a critical path item is it's huge, right? So we're really lucky in that sense. The big bang approach for our deployment, our previous deployments, we handled them a little bit different. We sort of handled each region as an independent deployment. Lync 2010, we did the three pools and 3 regions, and we sort of tested each region sort of individually, and then we did the mesh testing to make sure it all worked. This time around, we're doing it a little bit differently, especially because we have things like pool pairing, and there's a lot more dependency on the other pools than in previous versions. We just decided we're going to do a single global pilot and a single global test, and then we're going to do a single global deployment. So instead of doing sort of 3 individual little deployments with a final test at the end, we're just going to do 1 deployment with a big test at the end, just to essentially to save me headache, because when I thought about it, I was making it unnecessarily complicated for myself. For us, communication is very important, obviously. Some of the biggest issues we have within SunGard with any system, centralized system that we deploy, is firewalls, VPNs, etc. We have a lot of local firewalls within our organization that are not centrally managed. And then there are also centrally managed firewalls. So I might be able to get in through the first hop, but the second hop, you know, maybe that peer-to-peer audio port range isn't there. So there's a lot of network troubleshooting that goes on. But we've been communicating for months now about, because we implemented with the in-band port ranges that we did for QoS, it's a new, broader port range for peer-to-peer than we did in Lync 2010. So we've been telling people for months, check your firewall, check your firewall, check your firewall, double check your firewall. And we wrote a PowerShell script that we send out to all our local admins that do port queries against all of our servers. So we're at least able to verify that the TCP ports are opened from that site there. UDP, I don't know if someone knows how to do a telnet equivalent to a UDP port. I'd love I'd love to know because I've never been able to figure it out. And it also does not test the peer-to-peer ports as well. So we let people know your firewalls are very important, the script is very important, but keep in mind, peer-to-peer failures, it's your firewall. Check your firewall, check your firewall, check your firewall. So it's a battle I have continuously, but it's been something that, it's just one of those things that you have to be hyper aware of. It's one of the qualities that may be unique to SunGard or may not be unique to SunGard. Test script. Oh, and then we're doing our deployment with SCCM. That's how we're pushing our client out. Super simple, works really well. And then we do it by site. What we do is we take a site, say our New York City office, we'll get our pilot users, say 7, 10 people. We get them to confirm everything until Tuesday, then confirm it again. And then once we get the feedback from them that they tested all the services, they've done peer-to-peer calls with different locations, everything seems to work, then we'll go ahead and deploy to that office in a single day. Absolutely, and this is really, it's the SharePoint. For Lync 2010, we have a QA group within our organization, and I was luckily able to leverage them to help develop a custom SharePoint site specifically for Lync within our environment. So we already have a SharePoint site for all of our users. That's an IT site. It's called Connect IT. And that's where users can get all sorts of information. That's where they can get updates about outages. They can unlock their account there, for instance, if their account gets locked out. They can do a lot of stuff there. So right on that page, Lync is prominent. And we have a great deal of really high-quality Lync training material. Some of it is plagiarized by Microsoft and rebranded with SunGard. Some of it is SunGard specific. But there's a lot of good information there. And we also leverage Chatter. You guys familiar with Chatter? It's like, what did Microsoft just buy? That social? Yammer. It's just like Yammer. Chatter would shoot me if they heard me say that, but that's essentially what it's like. So that is also a great way that we found to educate and inform our users. I actually put it on my performance. My goals for the year is to maintain a very high Chatter participant rating, and I only get that from communicating about Lync. I only send out 2-3 Lync communications a year, and I get 500 likes, 200 comments. I always have the one guy who has to complain about something, but it's all there. So the SharePoint site has really been key for us for educating our users. It's a really good site, and that team they've done an awesome job. And they've been running the Lync 2013 client for a few months now. So they've been working hard, updating all of the documentation. And there are a lot of changes, as you well know, with the Lync 2013 client. And they're also helping me craft something for how to federate, how to add a Skype user. Because anyone who's done it, it's an extremely cumbersome process, and it creates a lot of confusion amongst users. And they're putting together like a pretty nice document that I feel once we have it, be very comfortable to say, hey, we're federated with Skype. Here's the documentation on how you do it, and it should answer all questions. So that team has been invaluable for us, really. But on top of it, like I said earlier, SunGard is a highly technical company, so our users are pretty savvy already. So I'll show you some stats for SunGard in a couple minutes, but these are statistics that came up with not much pushing from us. It's just a natural way for our users to operate these days. This is just a high-level video of what one of our data centers look like. So although you see the F5 pairs everywhere, it's actually one set of F5 devices that are in an active-passive high availability configuration. So you can see, we're doing the F5 for the reverse proxy. We have 2 edge servers in each location. We have minimum three front ends. We do the SQL mirroring with dedicated file share server that does DFS replication globally. So like we're pretty well covered there. Put in the local director to satisfy our security team, right? I mean, I'm not quite sure if it's required or not, but we put it in. And then the other thing that we put in new for Lync 2013 was persistent chat, which by the way, this is wrong. We're not running it with the load balancer. That's just DNS load balancing there. But the persistent chat, we're going to pilot it. We have some businesses that are interested in using it. I have some concerns about managing it. I'm a exchange engineer, to my core, and when I think of persistent chat, I can't help but think this is public folders 2.0. I hope I'm wrong. I went to the persistent chat session. They did alleviate some of my fears there, but that's why we only have one here, because this is a front-end server license. So we do one. We're going to do our pilot. It's load balanced. If we decide to put it into production, then we can obviously add another one. And we only did persistent chat in one location. So this persistent chat server will service all of our pools worldwide, unless obviously if there are performance issues, we're not going to ignore that. That's about it. And you see, this will be our North America. Then we have Singapore and London, our single SunGard office. And then, we do all the federation, which I'm pretty excited about Gmail federation, honestly. We have a ton of remote users, by the way. SunGard more and more is becoming a remote workforce. Lots of office consolidations, and you work from home now. You don't get a desk anymore, So that's going on, and then even for like my organization, we're IT. We work remotely a lot, just because we can, and it increases your quality of life, quite honestly. And if you're like me, you start working at 6:30 instead of 8:30 when you show up in the office. Your commute time is dedicated to work, and sometimes you forget I forget to eat lunch. It'll be 2 o'clock, and I realize I haven't gotten up in 6 hours. So yeah, so these are actually single pair of big IPs. Yeah, we're not load balancing the director because obviously if something's wrong with the director, we just go in and change the topology and move on. I can't, just because of how shell-shocked I am from reverse proxy in Lync 2010, I can't emphasize how happy I am with the reverse proxy that the F5 load balancers are doing. And honestly, I'm a little disappointed they're not here. There's only 2 supported reverse proxy configurations according to Microsoft for Lync. One is IIS, and the other is F5. Like if you look at supported reverse proxies, that's what they say. And I love it. I love it. It's so simple. It works so well. One issue I have to say about the F5s, though, is that monitoring them is a little bit challenging, and reports can be even more challenging. So, especially in Lync, with Lync reporting and your statistics and everything else, you can get so much good information. But getting information from the F5, I can get real-time information. I can tell you how many connections I have right now, but I can't tell you, when my peak was over the past 5 days on a specific virtual server. I just don't know it. So the monitoring and reporting there, leaves a little bit to be desired. You can set up SNMP traps for a lot of the stuff that you want to do. They did have a SCOM management pack that they discontinued, which is pretty disappointing. Anyway, not to go on a sales pitch for F5, but they do have an enterprise management platform, which I'm looking at shortly. And then one of the things I mentioned earlier that we are planning on doing later this year is right on the outside of the external edge, there'll be another F5 device called a global traffic manager. So the F5 big IPs are called local traffic managers, and then they have the big IP global traffic manager. So the local traffic manager obviously is just local traffic. It's not meant for data center to data center. but the global traffic manager is. The global traffic manager will have a partner in the other locations, and they'll be aware of each other, as well as aware of the health of the F5 virtual servers for Lync. So you can actually set it up where your environment blows up. You still have the global traffic manager there. It'll seamlessly send all your user traffic to the other location. Users will never know. This is something that, not to go off on another tangent, I'm super excited about for Exchange 2013, because this is going to give us the ability to go down to a single namespace for OWA. Right now, because we have multiple Exchange environments that have multiple web presence, we have to have regional URLs, and we want to get rid of that. The other thing with Exchange 2013 is that they now want you to connect to your local CAS instead of the CAS that's in the site of your mailbox server. So the global traffic managers will help us ensure that wherever I am in the world, when I plug in, it sends me to my regional CAS environment, and then that will proxy me back. So those solutions can do a lot of stuff, and they really amplify the capabilities of the Microsoft products to like a sort of like another level. Pool pairing is great, but being able to fail your web URLs over, you know, with a snap of a finger is pretty awesome. Lessons for SunGard. I mean, I'm still learning lessons because, like I said, we're still in the throes of some of this stuff. But really, it's be prepared to troubleshoot, right? I mean, anyone who's deployed, you know. And you're going to have to deal with Netmon or Wireshark or something along those lines to sort of understand what's actually happening with that traffic. So you just have to be prepared to troubleshoot. And sometimes it's not easy. You know, the Lync logging tool, half the stuff in there, I can't find any documentation on what it's logging. You know, so if I'm having an issue and I want to say, hey, you know, say my web app, I'm having issues uploading PowerPoints. If I want to do the Lync logger, what services do I go in there and check in order to get that information? I have no idea. I have found documentation on some of the most popular ones, but there's, I don't know, 50 or more in that list. So that's one of the issues with the Lync logging tool. Sometimes it requires Microsoft professional services to hold your hand there to identify the appropriate things to log. I'm also very lucky because I've been working with our Microsoft team with these products for over 6 years. So like Kevin Cherry, who's here, he's been working. I've known him, you know, for like 7 years now. And Tim Ring, he gave a couple sessions this week. He and Teo, who's also one of our UC specialists at the Technology Center, it's literally 3 miles down the road from my office. And, you know, we're federated with Microsoft, so they hear from me all the time. So I often go to those guys, and they've been a huge help. Know your environment, right? Everyone has their own flavor, right? Everyone has, you know, something unique about them. But these environmentals are going to they make or break your Lync deployment, right? And if you don't know what's going on in your environment and you start having Lync issues, you're just in for a rough road ahead. So you really need to know your environment. You need to understand your networking. You need to understand your proxy environments, because we've seen a lot of issues. For instance, local proxies don't have exemptions in for our web services URLs, for instance. So even though they're on the LAN, when they're going to the web services URL, we do split brain DNS. It's going out to the internet, coming in through the reverse proxy, and obviously they start to have issues there because your data is not taking the appropriate path. We also recently had an office I'll mention them, in Dublin, in case anyone's watching. Lots of audio-video issues, you know, so I'm getting in there, we're troubleshooting, and they're not using standard DNS. They have a localized DNS. We do split-brain DNS, so anything they're resolving for any of our services, they're getting a public IP while they're sitting on our LAN. And they're wondering why they're having network problems. You know, and this goes back into, you know, my spiel of DC should be DNS servers for your Windows clients. I have that debate quite frequently within my organization. But you just have to know what's out there. That way you can sort of meet those things on head first and be prepared for them. For us, also knowing your environment, we knew we had to upgrade our F5 load balancers for Lync. We knew we had to do it. I've been talking about it for 18 months. We need to go to the next level. We didn't upgrade them. So now we're around 2.5, 3 months behind in our total project, primarily because I've spent a ridiculous amount of time and effort upgrading our load balancers. Where if we just would have done it a year ago before it was a critical path for our project, it would have been a much, much smoother transition. And I would have been a lot happier because the F5s, they manage everything for us. You know, SharePoint, Exchange, all sorts of remote connectivity comes through the F5. So that means all that work has to be done off hours, and none of it's simple. So I found myself working many, many Sunday mornings, for instance, because that's one of the only times in the world where we actually don't have someone in the office. You know, I'll get up, I'll work 6 a.m. Sunday morning, and the F5 upgrade just goes completely belly up. 6 hours later, I'm fried, frazzled, and I have to go back to my original configuration. And that was pretty much my life for the past 3 months. It's done now, thank God. So that sort of ties into like just do your prep, have a plan. The other area that we really ran into an issue is that in Asia we needed a new circuit for our infrastructure, a new internet circuit. And that was supposed to be done many, many months ago. And we finally, just last week, got a commitment from the vendor for March 7th. So I've had to come up with a workaround because at this point, we just can't wait for you anymore. But it created a problem for us. If we just would have identified that early and took care of it early, our Lync deployment would be close to be done right now. The other thing as far as prep goes, and this goes back to what I was saying earlier about project managers. If you have a project management office, if you're lucky enough to have real project managers, they help you actually predict dates, identify lengths of time things are going to take, the types of resources you're going to need to get your product, your solution done, and they help you just really come up with a very efficient plan of attack. And anyone ever asks you a question, how's the Lync project? You just point them to the SharePoint URL of your project server and say, go take a look. So for us, areas of focus besides finishing our deployment, obviously, which right now we have one issue that's really holding us up. Our web app servers really don't seem to be working very well for us. We finally got it so a presenter can upload a document, but the participants can't do anything with it. They can't even view it. So we have an open ticket with Microsoft right now that we're working through. That'll really be my primary focus next week when I get back into the office, is to get that straightened out as soon as possible, because that is the only thing that's holding us up right now. And it seems like Lync people don't know about the web app server. I mean, I don't know if I had a couple conversations this week, and yeah, the web app, yeah. But those are the web people, you know, because it's really not a Lync service. It's a service built outside of Lync that Lync leverages. So we've been finding it a little bit tricky sort of navigating the support path there, because it's who do you want to talk to? Do you want to talk to a Lync person? Do you want to talk to a web app person? And I'm thinking the latter at this point, because and you've done the Lync deployment. Web app configuration it's not complicated. You know, it's not a lot to it. But areas of focus for us, mobility is a huge one. We see a lot of potential cost savings there. A lot of international travel within SunGard, a lot of international travel within SunGard. So just giving our users another method to communicate without using either their international minutes or international toll calls is pretty powerful. We do recognize that there is going to need to be a ton of user training revolving around the Lync mobility application, right? Because if the goal is to save money, when I'm in Singapore, I don't want to walk down the street using their 4G network doing a Lync call, because that's going to be very, very expensive, right? So, and then like you were mentioning to me, just managing user expectations. If you're in a busy Starbucks and there's 15 college kids with laptops and your call doesn't sound very good, it's not Lync. Your environment is going to have a lot to do with the experience that you have with this product. So it's just making sure that users' expectations are managed and they understand the right circumstances in which to use that tool. But it's huge for us, you know. And with the added feature set of the client, you know, it's the real deal on your phone now. Where the 2010 client really, you can get me if you need me, right? But I'm going to call you on my phone when you send me an IM and I get it on my phone. We're going to have a huge focus on reports because this is where we prove the value of this product. This is where we show that unified communications is a smart investment for our organization. And this is where we show that people love it because the adoption rate is so ridiculous. And we're working with some vendors right now to sort of do a centralized console for all of our unified communications platforms. They'll pull the Lync databases, they'll pull the Polycom information, they'll pull everything, bring it in one place, and give us very detailed information on our utilization for the systems, but it also will give us very interesting information of location-to-location utilization, which we really don't have right now, right? So if I want to know, you know, how many calls are from our Philadelphia office to our London office that go through Lync for, you know, the past 7 days, I'll be able to get that information. And you can do the math. You can turn that into real call savings. Like, it's real. Unlike, I remember when I did the Exchange 2010 upgrade, within SunGard, I had to give some justifications, and I was reading some of the Microsoft justifications, and they were talking about you can save money with increased efficiency. It's not real money. I need to show real money, right? This is $10,000 that we saved last month because of this solution. So that is a big deal for us. The other thing about the reports that we absolutely love is the errors. You know, we love to be able to go in there and see what kind of errors we're having in the environment, where they're trending, what kind of errors they are. And they've really helped us identify issues within our environment. I think it is on the next slide, but after we upgraded one of the issues we had with our F5 load balancers, after we upgraded it, and I'm a firm believer of doing things by the documented book. You know, I don't deviate at all unless I absolutely must. So our F5 configuration, it's to the T, right? It is just solid. We start seeing a ton of their diagnostic ID 25006 callee's primary pool failed to respond in a timely manner. It's all about inner Lync routing. I don't know anything about it, right? How the pools talk to each other and decide stuff, it's a little bit above my mental capacity, right? So I just see this error and I'm thinking, what the heck is going on? It's only happening against the location that I just upgraded the load balancer, right? I see the error, but I'm not sure if users are experiencing issues or not. I haven't heard any complaints. But I'm seeing, you know, we're going from having 2 to 3 of these errors a week to having many thousands a day, right? So I'm reaching out to our Asia support team. I say, hey, guys, I need to know any sort of issues you guys are seeing with Lync. I'm seeing a ton of these errors. And sure enough, they come back. They're having a lot of presence issues. You know, so what the end user would see, their entire contact list would disappear, and their status would be unknown. Audio works, video works, all the systems work, but it's just the IM and presence, right? It's not peer-to-peer. It's only SIP. Like, what the hell is, excuse me, sorry. What's going on, right? I said this would be a successful session if I didn't curse. I blew it. You know, so what's going on? And I review the documentation, documentation's solid. I go to F5, I open up a support. You're one of the only people that follows our document. Well done. But we don't know why it doesn't work. So let's reconfigure the virtual server for SIP. So that's what we did. We reconfigured it. We basically dumbed it down a little bit, set it to be essentially a SIP pass-through virtual server, Speed was the name of the game in that situation, and sure enough, as soon as we made that change, our issue goes away. But now we have a non-standard configuration for our SIP virtual server within our Lync infrastructure. But that's an example of where these alerts can really, really help you out, get you in front of it. Instead of having people knock on your door asking what's going on, you can say, yeah, I got it, I know it, I'm on it, I'll let you know as soon as I have it fixed. So reports, huge. Focuses for us, enterprise voice, E911. I know you guys don't have to deal with it because you have different regulations in Europe, but we have to deal with it, unfortunately. I say unfortunately because I think it's going to be a pain, but it'll be nice when it's done. We're looking at some vendors to do that. There's one vendor, I think their name is Red Sky. Verizon's a reseller of theirs. We're already a Verizon customer. They manage our network, so it makes a lot of sense for us. So we're hoping that we can sort of pawn that responsibility onto another organization, because mapping out our environment does not sound fun to me for E911 purposes. But we're required by law to provide that functionality for any office. I know you don't have to provide it for remote people, but you have to provide it if someone is actually in your facility, and yet it has to be of a specific detail. What floor you're on, what section of the floor you're on, etc. And a lot of the solutions out there are pretty cool. They can have it set up where anyone dials 911 in any facility, notifications automatically get sent to specific people within that facility, so they're aware of it. You say your facility staff, for instance, maybe that way if they're aware if there's a fire or an emergency. You can do a lot of stuff with that. It's pretty cool. So that's something we have to do. We have integrated our Lync environment with Sonos. We use the Sonos, for, the net boxes in Asia for our enterprise voice deployment. In Europe and in the United States, we have Sonos SBCs in our data center that have redundant SIP trunks into them, and we have configured Lync to use those. From a Lync perspective, it's great. I have one gateway. I send all my traffic to it, and it really manages a lot of the intelligence about the routing and how things are to happen. This coming year, we're looking to deploy the Sonos PSX, which is essentially, forgive me, this is not my area of expertise, but it's essentially a carrier class SIP switch that is one hop inside your SBC. And we're going to be deploying those in each region, and that's what we're going to be pointing Lync into. The PSX should give us the ability to integrate our existing phone systems that aren't necessarily going away anytime soon. We have a pretty large Avaya infrastructure. We have pretty large Cisco footprint. They're not going away. But we want to enterprise voice enable those users. We want them to have Lync as their soft phone, and we want them to have Exchange UM. So within SunGard, we spent a lot of time talking about unified communications, the path we're taking to unified communications, and there is a consistent gap for us. What's going to bring all this stuff together, right? What is going to allow everything that we have, all of these disparate systems that we're not getting rid of anytime in the near future, what is going to allow us to integrate them with our Lync environment and give us the ability to give our users a similar experience across the board, regardless of technically what their PBX is on the back end. So we see the PSX as a real key. I actually termed the phrase unificator. It's in the Urban Dictionary. I summoned my inner George W. Bush when I came up with that one. But the PSX is going to be our unificator. The other thing that's nice about it is that, from a Lync perspective at least, all of the other phone systems and components out there can be upgraded, and I don't have to be worried about how their upgrade is going to affect the integration with Lync, right? So each of these systems can be upgraded at will, and then the PSX sort of stays there in the middle, and it keeps them all sort of at bay enough where they can maintain a certain level of independence and not have a direct reliance on one another. So if you start thinking about Cisco, Avaya, your Nortel, whatever you have in your environment, bringing them all into Lync, as soon as you upgrade Lync, you have to think about Cisco, Avaya, Nortel, and everything else. With this sort of solution, we don't have to do that. So we're pretty excited about that. We think that that's going to be the real key to a very large global Lync voice deployment within our organization. The PSX also does really nice stuff. It's going to help us have some really intelligent call routing because the name of the game is saving money. So keeping those calls on your network as opposed to off your network, again, just like with the mobility, it translates into real dollars, and it makes people like me look good, right? Really. I mean, I'm a cockroach kid from Philadelphia, you know, punk rock kid, and I get to say, look how much money I saved a Fortune 500 company. It's pretty cool. We were talking about federation earlier and how it was my desire to increase federation. I think federation is incredible. Primarily right now we're federated with IT organizations, Microsoft, Polycom, etc. But really for me it's a personal goal of mine to really push federation within SunGard this next year. I think the addition of the Skype federation is going to tantalize people a little bit to become more aware of federation. But like I was saying earlier, I'm very keen on having open federation. I would like to do it. I would like to get approval for it. We don't dictate who you can email. I don't see why we should dictate who you should send an IM to. And Lync does a pretty good job of throttling the traffic if it's not explicitly listed within your federated partner list. So there's not a lot of danger there, in my opinion. But there is a lot to be gained from the business perspective. You know, you're a sales guy, you're a support guy, you have clients, you have customers. Being able to interact and collaborate with them through Lync is going to be a real boon for them, I think. And I think federation is going to be the next sort of big thing within our environment for Lync. Just some examples of some of the errors that we see. This is the diagnostic ID 25006 that I mentioned earlier that we started seeing after we upgraded our Lync pool, our F5s. And then these diagnostic ID 22 and 23s we see pretty regularly. Not a lot, but we do see pretty regularly. 22 is when two endpoints are internal, they can't talk. 9 times out of 10 it's firewall networking related. 23 is when one is internal and one is external. And that one has been a little bit more challenging to troubleshoot for us because it's a very small failure rate, and when we test it works. So it's kind of hard. It's kind of hard to troubleshoot it when you can't recreate the issue on the fly. You just sort of get random reports, and then you go to the report console, and sure enough, yeah, there it is. Can you repeat it? No, it works now. All right, next time it doesn't work, let me know. Lync 2013 usage for SunGard is pretty good. Over 5 million conferencing minutes last year within SunGard. Over 3.5 million peer-to-peer minutes. And then 350,000 PSTN minutes. That number will grow. That's primarily Asia. That's over 9 million minutes on Lync last year. I think that's pretty good. And then an interesting thing we did notice is that when we do our trending, the utilization from January 2013 compared to December 2013, it had increased almost 50%. So there's definitely a natural progression of usage there. You know, you see it growing. This is so far. This is January, right? So January, we did over 10 million IMs. Pretty awesome. Right? If you only had $1 for each IM, right? 600,000 peer-to-peer minutes, pretty good. You know, 80,000 video minutes. Obviously, we don't use video as much. This is what I do to my webcam. I put the sticker over it. Lync meetings. You know, 20,000 Lync meetings in a month. I don't know what this compares to your organizations or other organizations, but I don't have anything to sort of gauge it against, but it seems pretty good to me. And then obviously, you know, the 350,000 AV minutes. And we're going to blow away Q4, the Q4 stats for 2013. The Q1 stats for 2014 are going to be way better. So even though our user adoption rate has been incredible, people love it, it's just they're using it more and more. The future. Heh. Enterprise Voice and Exchange Really, it's one of our prime focuses. Be it the integration with the PSX to be able to get our Avaya users to have Lync as their soft phone, which will be a huge, enormous win in our organization, or just the random offices. The office I work out of, we're running a antique Nortel phone system with Meridian Mail. Has no functionalities whatsoever. You can't forward calls. You can't do anything. That office is going to come over to Lync Enterprise Voice, and that's a good office. We have a lot of our chief executives work out of that office. Many assistants. So it'd be nice. We'll have a lot of Polycom phones with sidecars on them, and do that whole thing. Integrating our existing phone system, that's going to be huge for us, right? We have 8,000 users between our various phone systems that we're not getting rid of. That's half our organization. So being able to set that up with the PSX is going to be a quick, large-scale win for us. And the other thing we're doing, we're starting we've been working with Clarity Connect. They're working on a statement of work with us right now. But we're looking to pilot Clarity Connect with our internal help desk. So this is going to bring IM Alive or Lync Alive to the help desk SIP address. So the help desk will have one SIP address, and whoever you are, you can IM it, ask you a series of questions, new or existing case, what's this related to, et cetera, and then it gets routed to the next available help desk support person who within their Lync client will have a window that goes to salesforce.com, which is our ticketing system, that'll have all of the information that those users had entered in their IM message. So that's pretty cool. We're pretty excited about that. What time is it? Time did it end? So this is actually my last slide, so it's a good time. But really, for SunGard and for me, Lync has been like an incredible experience, and it has quickly become our flagship application. It's one of the most important services that we offer. With that comes a lot of responsibility, but comes a lot of great opportunity as well. So we love it. So I'd like to thank Microsoft for having me here, and I'd like to thank all of you guys for showing up.